Greetings to all my dear students. Welcome all to the discussion session of the Divine Comedy Paradise Canto 4. As you know, the Divine Comedy includes three cantos: the Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso. Here we have to discuss the Canto 4 of Paradiso. Beatrice is guiding Dante through the moon, the lowest sphere of the paradise. In Canto 1, Dante and Beatrice rise towards the heaven. In Canto 2, they ascend into the first sphere, that is the moon. In Canto 3, Dante sees spirits, and they are on the lowest sphere of heavens because they lapsed in their woes during life. And Dante speaks to Piccarda Donati, who was a medieval noblewoman from Florence. And Piccarda Donati became a nun at the young age. She joined the order of Saint Clare. A year later, she was forcibly removed from nunnery by her brother Corso Donati, who forced her to marry Rossellino for political interest. And here, in the moon, Dante asks Piccarda if she does not long to be placed higher in heaven. But she says, blessed souls long only for what they have, and so their wills are entirely in agreement with that of God. They simply rejoice in their placement. In Canto 4, Beatrice clears two doubts felt by Dante. Here you can see lines 1 to 15. So let's analyze these lines. Beatrice embodies the quest for truth, illuminating Dante's doubts because of her greater insight, which she possesses because she is already in union with God. Between two dishes equally attractive and near to him, a free man, I suppose, would starve to death before his teeth got active. So would a lamb twixt two fierce wolfish foes, fearing the fangs both ways, not stir a foot. So would a deer hound haul between two desks. So I can't blame myself for standing mute, nor praise myself, for I must needs so do, suspend twixt two doubts alike acute. I held my tongue, but my desire showed through, with lovelier colours painted in my look than speech could lend, so did my questions too. So taking now a leaf from Daniel's book, when he assuaged Nebuchadnezzar's ire, which made him cruel, unjust, and hard to brook, Beatrice said. Yes, Piccarda's words have aroused in Dante's mind two doubts, which disturb him equally acutely, and he cannot decide which to mention first, so he stands mute. And Dante says he is trapped in between two doubts, just like two dishes, and which are equally attractive, and just like we are facing a difficulty to select which one first. Okay, so just like this, Dante is facing a crisis with regard to ask which question first, and he feels himself like a lamb which is trapped in between the fangs of a wolf, or between the legs of a dog. So having these two questions in his mind. Okay, the questions are not mentioned in the first few lines of the poem. So he is having a great doubt in his mind, and he stands silent. Dante stands silent, but his face reflected his doubts. I held my tongue, but my desire showed through, with livelier colors painted in my look. Then Dante says, just like Daniel read the dream of Nebuchadnezzar, Beatrice read my doubts. Beatrice read my desire to clear my doubts. As you know, Nebuchadnezzar is a character from the book of Daniel, from the Old Testament of Bible. And he was a king. Okay, Nebuchadnezzar was a king. who dreamed a figure with a golden head, silver arms and chest, belly and thighs of brass, legs made partly of iron and partly of clay. And when the wise men failed to explain the dream, king threw them into prison. Daniel, who was a hostage in the court of Babylon, explained the dream easily. But later, when he and his companions refused to bow down to king's idols, they were thrown to the furnace but protected by God. Okay, so this is the story of Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar saw a dream, but he forgot that. But Daniel, with the help of God, he could easily interpret the dream of Nebuchadnezzar. So just like that, Beatrice, having the blessings of God, okay, she had already united with God, so she could easily reflect upon the doubts there are in the mind of Daniel. So understanding the ambiguous situation of Daniel, Beatrice starts to give answer to his questions. Let's move on to the next stanza, line number 16 to 21. Beatrice said, "Well, I know how desire tugs thee two ways, and thy great eagerness can find no vent, being chalked in its own wire. Thou arguest, if the will to righteousness persist, how is it just that violence wrought by other men should make my merit less?" Okay, so Beatrice realizes the doubts which Dante is brooding over. And Beatrice says, "Yeah, now I realize that you are pulled in between two doubts. You have the desire to know the answers of those two doubts, and you cannot find any way for expressing these doubts. You are being chalked in between wires. You are being chalked in between these doubts. And the first doubt is how a person's merit can justly be reduced if that person was violently forced to do something against their will." Okay, here the question is regarding Piccarda Donati, how she was forced out of nunnery or the convent. Actually, it was not her fault. So Beatrice answers the first question later. Okay, so here Beatrice just summarizes those two doubts. Then let's move on to the next stanza. Line number 22. "A further puzzle gives thee food for thought. These souls, which as it seems, complete their course, returning to the stars, as Plato said. And these two questions with an equal force weigh on thy will. So I will begin straight away with that which has most venom, it is Joe's." Okay, here Beatrice summarizes the second puzzle, okay, the second doubt. And that is, human souls appear to return to their allotted stars, a fact that seems to indicate Plato rather than Christianity. So Dante is having such a doubt in his mind. Plato, in his work Timaeus, Timaeus, has stated regarding the returning of souls to their stars. Each individual soul was coming from the spheres of heaven, from the stars, into an individual, and then at birth, and then when somebody died, the soul would return to the sphere where it came from. And this is not a Christian doctrine, and Plato was condemned by the church. So Beatrice says, this is the most poisonous doctrine or idea between the two that you are thinking. Because Plato, in formulating this theory, was basically denying the theory of direct creation of a soul by God. Okay, so Beatrice addresses the second question as the most venomous one. Okay, so and these two questions with an equal force weigh on thy will. Okay, will means here it means intellect. Okay, these two questions, are based on your intellect. And so I will begin straight away with the most venomous one, the most poisonous thought. Yeah, that's the second question. So she addresses the second question first and distinguishes between the Platonic teaching and Christian teaching. Okay, so in the next few stanzas, we can find the answer for this question. Okay, so next stanza. No seraph, not the most in God's name, not Moses, Samuel, nor either John, take which thou will, not Mary itself, I say, is throned in any heaven, but in that one where dwell these souls thou hast beheld, nor had their being more or fewer years to run. But each in the first circle glittereth, and all share one sweet life, diversified as each feels more or less the eternal breath. So here Beatrice says basically all souls live or dwell in heaven's highest sphere, that is in the first circle, that is in the empyrean. Okay, the highest circle, that is in the empyrean. Okay, all the souls, okay, including Moses, all the seraphs, all the angels, then Samuel, then John, then Virgin Mary. Okay, all of them are in the empyrean along with other souls. Okay, here the poet writes, nor either John, take which thou wilt. Okay, so there are two characters, two John. First one is John the Baptist. The second John is John the Evangelist, the apostle of Christ. That is Saint John. Okay, so take which thou will. Okay, so Beatrice says all these seraphs, all these angels, then Moses, Samuel, John, either John the Baptist or the John the Evangelist, then Virgin Mary. Okay, all these saints, all these good souls are there in the empyrean along with other souls whom you met in the moon or in the other circles. Okay, so now in Canto 4, okay, while Dante is writing Canto 4, the concept is Dante and Beatrice are in the moon. Okay, so in the moon, they have met some souls, including Piccarda. Okay, so now what Beatrice is saying, all the souls dwell in the empyrean. But how could he meet Piccarda in the moon? Beatrice gives the answer in the next stanza. They are shown thee here, not that they here reside, allotted to the sphere their heavenly mansion, being least exalted, is thus signified. This way of speech best suits your apprehension, which knows but to receive reports from sense and fit them for the intellect's attention. Okay, so Beatrice says it is only the reflection of those souls who dwell in the empyrean are seen in the different spheres. They are only reflections. And that does not mean that they are residing in the moon or in the lower spheres. And all these souls are in the empyrean, sharing the same sweet life, but maybe having diversified experiences or diversified feelings in their eternal life. Okay, so all these souls are allotted in the empyrean, but their reflections are seen in different spheres with a clear-cut vision. Okay, so Beatrice says Picada and Constance have appeared to Dante in a lower sphere in order to illustrate the teaching on God's variously expressed providence. For all souls, regardless of where they dwell, life is sweet in different ways. Okay, here in this stanza, exalted means elevated or raised. Okay, is this signified, Beatrice says. The word signified is a key word to this passage. That which Dante is shown in paradise is a sign presented to his senses so that his intellect may grasp the meaning. Okay, so according to Aristotelian idea, the intellect works upon images. Okay, so the imaginative faculties receive from the faculties of sense the impressions which they present for the intellect to work on. When the intellect has done so, love is awakened. In the next lines, you can say about holy scriptures and all. So, intellect is working upon the images or our understanding of the world or what is happening around us. Okay, this way of speech best suits your apprehension. Apprehension means the understanding or the imagination, which knows but to receive reports from sense and fit them for the intellect's attention. So Beatrice says, now you are in heaven and you are meeting several souls. You are getting different images through your senses, and your intellect is working upon all these senses to find a meaning. So here Beatrice is trying to give a clear understanding or a clarity regarding the doubts that Dante has in his mind. Let's read and analyze lines 43 to 63. Here, Dante is presenting Aristotle's theory of human knowledge. We can know anything through our senses. Beyond that, we cannot really know or understand things. The entire Divine Comedy is based on this principle. If there are things that go beyond our senses that Dante needs to express to us, this should be expressed like a fiction that is in line with our senses. Yes, here, the first stanza, lines 43 to 45. So scripture stoops to our intelligence. It talks about God's hand and feet, intending that you should draw a different inference. Okay, Bible speaks of the majesty of God. Bible and scriptures talk in such a way. The Bible is talking about principles and God himself. Whenever Dante talks about God with feet and hands, we don't know the gender of God and there is no specific gender for God. But in order to meet the expectation or the level of human beings, the religion teaches in a normal way through imaginations. Yes, our intellect works upon images. This it is that Holy Scripture presents man with the knowledge of God by means of images. And it leads to intellectual understanding and finally to love. It is probable that Dante intends the reader to understand the literal meaning and the imagery of the Divine Comedy in the same way. Dante renders paradise intelligible in terms of sense, imagination, and intellect. Yes, and so does Holy Church in pictures lending a human face to Michael, Gabriel, and him by whom all Tobit found amending. So, just like Bible is presenting different images in order to meet the expectation or in order to attract the senses of the human beings, iconography is also important. Dante mentions three archangels, Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael. Here, the him in the third line is Raphael, and him by whom all Tobit found amending, line 48. Yeah, the archangel Raphael, who enabled Tobias to cure the blindness of his father Tobit, Yeah, this story is from the Old Testament. Actually, Dante is teaching us many uh, points or many ideas, common concepts. Archangels are misunderstood by the Christian doctrine not to be real human figures. In fact, we are used to think about angels as looking like people like humans. But in the early Christianity, the iconography representing angels and archangels was something very different from what it is today. I think probably after Renaissance and Romanticism, we have these kinds of cute looking angels. But angels are supposed to be powerful entities with pure energy, light, and not really have a human face. They have a human face to make themselves understood by people. Yes, Dante says Bible and Holy Scriptures present their ideas in a normal way, catering the imaginative faculties of human being, just to make these ideas familiar to the public or to the people. Okay, next lines. That which Timaeus of the soul does tell is not like things shown here for thy behoof, for what he says he seems to think as well. What Plato saying in Timaeus is not true, because what we can see here is different. And Beatrice allows the possibility that he may have been speaking figuratively. Yes, Plato in the dialogue of Timaeus appears not to speak in symbols or signs, but to mean literally what he says. And here, Dante is trying to integrate some of the ideas of Plato into the Christian doctrine. Yes, it is clear in the next few lines. He says the soul at death returns above to its own star, from which it was divided. He thinks, when nature made a form thereof. Yet he may not have meant to be guided by the word's surface sense, and thus might claim another purport not to be derided. If it's their influence whose praise or blame, he would refer back to these wheeling stars. His bow may not have wholly missed its aim. Hence, almost all the world in former years rushed off, misconstruing the history to call on Jove and Mercury and Mars. So, Beatrice says Plato didn't intend literally that the souls are returning each to its sphere, but he meant that only their honor and their influence as a concept go back to those spheres, but the souls themselves actually go back to the empyrean. Okay, read the lines 52 to 54. Yeah, what's the meaning of those lines? Yeah, Plato says, or in Plato's myth of the creation, he teaches that the soul leaves its native star when at its birth on earth. Nature allows it to inform the body, and at death, if it has lived well, it returns again to its stars. Okay, here the word form means the body. When the soul was joined with the body, it became the body's essential and constituent form. And again, you can see a phrase, he thinks, which is given in bracket. Okay, here is Plato. Actually, Dante is trying to save Plato, integrating some of his ideas into Christian doctrine. Then, what about the next stanza, line number 55 to 57? Yeah, he says, or Dante says, or Beatrice in Canto 4 says, Plato actually meant some other meanings. Okay, not the literal one. Some inner meanings. Yeah, just after the death, a soul's honor and its influence go back to the spheres. And the souls themselves actually go back to the empyrean, the highest level of paradise, where the Virgin Mary, the Trinity, and all other saints and angels dwell. All the good spirits dwell. Yeah, again, in the next stanza, line numbers 58 to 60. Yeah, the influence, the praise or blame of those souls stay in the different planets or in the different spheres in the paradise. So Plato had a very different idea in his mind when he was writing this particular myth of creation or a story of creation. Yes, Beatrice says, hence almost all the world in former years brushed off, misconstruing this theory, means misinterpreting Plato's theory to call on Jove and Mercury and Mars. Okay, so for the former years or for many years, people misinterpreted Plato's theory and they believed that these souls, after death, they go back to the planets or spheres like Jupiter, Mercury, or Mars. But actually, Plato meant a entirely different thing. Dante is presenting these ideas because Dante believed that the will was free. Okay, so up to line 63, we can see that Beatrice is answering the second question felt by Dante. Yeah, what was that question? Yes, Picarda spoke of the moon as her allotted sphere. Was Plato then right, after all, in teaching that souls returned to the stars after death? Yeah, this was the question. And Beatrice was answering. She was analyzing the theory presented by Plato and hence giving a clear-cut answer to Dante as well as to the public or to the readers. So just after this, Beatrice moves on answering to the first question. So line number 64 starts with the answer for the first question. Thank you.